there are some clients who, when they call you for the first time, will say, I know exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Okay. I said, then you don't need me. Put me in an uncertain space where you say, I think I like this, but I'm not too sure. I'm fine with that. But if you're very sure, you need a contractor and not me.
Recently, I heard a new thing that Vastu is connected with astrology. I said, but if there are 4 people in the house, then whose astrology will you take? So this is just going to another level only.
According to me, Vastu is related to energy.
Yeah.
So, whenever in the ancient time we don't have any type of mechanical instrument like cooling, heating, or lighting. So, based on those requirements, they have created certain type of principles so we can achieve a well-being life.
Now in hospitality, a lot of clients come up with this idea that they want something that looks good on Instagram, which I get from a business perspective, that they need to showcase these spaces on Instagram. The major platform for marketing is Instagram.
Get ready to witness powerful exchange of ideas and perspectives from renowned professionals in the field. Now, as we move forward with our event, it is time to acknowledge and honor the brilliant minds who have joined us today to share their invaluable insights and expertise. With that, I would like to invite our panelists on the stage. We have Meena Murthy Kakkar from Envisage. We have Manoj Patel from Manoj Patel Design Studio. We have Suvidha Gandhi from Paper Sky Studio. We have our moderator, Hiloni Sutaria from HSC Designs. As we move ahead, let me brief you about the next panel discussion of the day, titled, From Appreciation to Celebration, Interiors for Well-Being. Beyond the surface, beauty of a space lies its profound ability to nurture the soul and invigorate the spirit, a narrative often overshadowed by fleeting trends. Interiors have the power to serve as sanctuaries, motivators, and even healers, influencing our emotions and overall well-being. Yet, their full potential often remains untapped. This discussion aims to explore how design can go beyond aesthetics to create environments that foster comfort, inspiration, and holistic wellness, ultimately celebrating interiors as an essential contributor to our quality of life. Without further ado, I'll hand over the stage to our moderator.
Hi, everyone. Hi, fellow panelists.
Hello.
Hello. We can start the discussion with the topic of well-being in interior spaces. Interior design entails understanding of deeper human needs along with aesthetics. How do you guys as designers define well-being in the context of interior spaces? Is it physical comfort, mental serenity, or something more holistic? And how does that vary across different age groups? And it would be interesting to know, because India is a space where we have a lot of multi-generational spaces, especially homes. How do you guys cater to these different age groups across the space in a singular space? I think we can have questions across. Hi.
So, see, though we have different requirements for different age groups, which one has to cater to. We are also forgetting pets. People are very, very sensitive about having
Yes,
pets
that's
at
very
home.
true.
Right? So the materiality changes, the way you treat the details changes. But at the end, this is the practical aspect of it. It all has to tie up to ensure that the space has a peaceful, energy to it. And peace could mean different things to different people. So wellness comes from the fact that if you're able to come home at the end of the day and you're able to unwind very comfortably, and the finishes and whatever they do, they don't jostle for attention. Say for instance, if say I'm in a profession, say I'm right now in a profession where I deal with a lot of color and material and textures and patterns. If I come home, I want something that's subdued. Okay, if say I was a IT professional working on a screen the entire day, maybe I would need some color to invigorate my mind. So a house that allows you to be yourself and understands your need when you come back home to it, I think that is the base of being a space that is designed for well-being. So it has to be customized and it has to ensure serenity. So
That's so well put. I would love to hear your thoughts.
Hello, everyone. What is well-being? For me, well-being is being happy, feeling complete, being at peace. And you will realize you feel happy and at peace when all your five senses are happily, totally together stimulated, and they're taken care of. So all the five senses, like our sight, our smell, our hearing, our taste, all of that has to be looked after, right, when we're designing. And I often think about how do you put so many different generations together, and I really believe that how nature coexists. See the mountains, the sky, the ocean, everything coexists together, tall trees, short shrubs. And if nature can coexist, and that's what we were born with, family are the people who belong together. So it's very naturally a space has to come around where they coexist. Yes, there may be ergonomical needs or storage needs which can be individually catered to, but I think a home is somewhere where it doesn't matter, a small chotu fellow or a grandfather, right? Everybody have to come together and coexist, and that's what I think makes a family home for me.
What do you think?
Good evening, everyone. According to me, well-being is a different type of environment for different type of space. So each space have a different type of well-being. If you talk about residential, their need is very different. If you talk about commercial, their also need is very different. So these things I want to explain in a two different way with the example. So recently I have completed one residence, and it's a small family residence in Vadodara. So in this, the family have a certain type of view, like they try to they want their house inward looking house, and they are not much to expose the everyone, and parallelly they want a natural house. So in this case we have created a square box house, and in between we created two courtyard in between, and all the spaces is connected to this courtyard. And we define two courtyard as a well-being courtyard. Like courtyard 1 is connected with the kitchen, so it's a breakfast courtyard, and courtyard 2 connected with the other spaces. And that courtyard we have created multi type of spaces like vegetations, water body, and some type of sound therapy. So this courtyard we call as a meditation courtyard. So according to me, well-being we have to develop in a different type of requirement, different way. And her second question is how the intergenerational connected to each other. So we have designed one residence before 2 years back, and in that case the area of the plot is very small, around 1200 square feet. And in this case the family member of husband, wife, two daughter, and one single grandmother. So in this case we propose the one bedroom on ground floor, but it's a multi-purpose room. During daytime it acts as a second living room, and during night they close the sliding and it acts as a private bedroom. So what we did in that bedroom, we have created multi-type of spaces. For grandmother we have created one sofa cum bed, so during daytime it acts as a sofa, and during night time it acts as a bed. And there is a one road, so parallel to road we have created one window sitting, so mother can interact with the street. And on that room we have also created one the study room for the children. So the grandmother is very passionate about teaching, so in this case they will interact with each other.
See, I think a space that responds to your needs is designed for well-being. And there are certain things that might be individual for different age groups, but there are some things that are common also, like good sunlight, ventilation, biophilic, design. These are all common. So the common things kind of flow across the spaces, and of course the personal things stay to individual spaces.
I think these are excellent points. What would be a good discussion as well is that especially when it comes to multi-generational homes, let's say the oldest member who is say 80, 85, they have sometimes different needs in their routine when we talk about the flow of spaces, and someone who is maybe 15 years old, a teenager, would want a different flow of spaces. But as designers, we have to merge these flows because they are all flowing through the house together. So how do we ensure that the textures or the more tactile spaces, or even, let's say, the basic spaces like windows, they respond better to both the generations and without a lot of different spaces allocated to each generation? Yeah, so how do we ensure that as designers, that what is your viewpoint? How do we ensure that as designers, except for allocating different spaces to them?
You're saying how to merge the requirements of different
Yes.
age groups.
Yes.
That's what.
Both the generations.
Both the
Both
generation.
of them. That's
Yeah.
right. Different
Yeah.
age groups.
Yeah, any
So-
like different age groups
Yeah.
flowing through the same spaces. How do we
See,
maybe
one is we need to understand the client deeper. For instance, now gone are the times where you could generalize about a 60-year-old as having certain issues or something. Now the 60-year-old might be a tennis player,
yeah.
right? Or
100%.
maybe the 70-year-old is going to the gym.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a high possibility of that also happening. And there is also possible that you have a teenage kid who's broken his leg. Okay, so we need to ensure that we know the family first and we don't jump to conclusions, and that then we say, okay, this is the kind of life they lead. For instance, if they are physically very active, they might be prone to injuries as well. But you look at a house which kind of helps them, in the majority of the times. There are always exceptions that you will have to deal with. But for instance, if you have somebody with a mobility issue, you will not design multiple levels in a house. Okay, and you'll be careful with, the surfaces that you use, the materials that you use. If a child is very restless, you would kind of give him a lot of stuff to kind of pent his energy out. So I think in a house, there are common spaces and then there are personal spaces. I mean, a house has both of them, a private space, a public space, and semi-private space. So the design detailing kind of goes through like that. For instance, the private spaces will adhere completely to the individualistic requirements. The public spaces would kind of soften the requirements. Of course, physical requirements have to be taken care of for everyone. And beyond that, it's a personal aesthetic choice or anything that we deal with.
There is no one way of doing this. And every project is so different. Every client is so unique. And as designers, our first primary job is to understand who they are, where they come from, where they want to be, what inspires them, how much do they travel, how much they socialize. It is such a long list of questions, And that and even what really is very important is, where is the space? For example, if it's in, say, Bombay, on the 50th floor facing the sea, versus it's in Goa, in a small, between the fields, a holiday home. It's even the end use. And what is the location? What is the architecture around? What is the view that you get from the building, from your windows? Because it's also about tying the outdoor with the inside. There's so many things which one needs to take care of while designing.
True.
Situation is different.
Every
For instance, one project of ours that we are doing, there's a particular grandchild and we are designing a room for the grandchild, the small kid, 2-year-old, but
Right.
the grandparents come and stay with the grandchild in his room only, and in, say, probably a couple of months in a year. So the room had to be designed for both.
Yes,
Now, the child wants a Lego wall. How do you do a Lego wall? Imagine a grandparent being pricked in the foot by a stray Lego piece. So, you have to do a Lego wall, but then put the bed in front so that the grandparents don't walk into that area at all,
Right.
and they're still comfortable. So I think it's pretty much knowing the
Yeah.
people in detail that helps us design.
That's very true. Knowing your clients is the most important.
Both the generation have a different type of need, so we have to understand it. And according to, we have to create. Earlier, I have said like a grandmother is very passionate about teaching, so we created that way. Like both generation, how can interact?
Yeah.
I think spaces also have to get people together. It's, we design how people live.
Yeah.
So as
100%.
designers, it's also a job where they have common areas, common interests, where they can hang together, they can spend TV. So we always ask our clients, how do you spend your family time? How do you spend your weekends? that's the bonding time. So you create spaces
I think
that
COVID changed that a lot.
Yes,
The
yeah.
way people perceive homes and how spaces morph from one thing. The kitchen, for instance, suddenly it acquired so much more meaning for a household that people started bonding over cooking and food,
Yeah.
that it became a central engagement space in the house. So I think it's an evolving thing and we need to react and respond to what we have on hand.
Yeah, so knowing your client is, I think, the most important. Okay, so moving on. A well balanced home is all about energy flow and harmony, which we talked about. In what ways do you think Vastu helps or does not help in aligning these elements for holistic living? I think we all have a love-hate relationship with Vastu.
Such a dicey subject. So, see, no offense to anyone, but I have seen both kinds of Vastu consultants. See, Vastu, we need to understand, originally it's a science that was created to ensure that there is harmony amongst all the elements inside the house. Okay, and so how much of it we use as understanding the reason behind it, and there is science and we understand and we use it in the right way, then till that point it makes sense. But when it goes into another dimension of, I will not even talk about it. So that kind of makes things difficult. Okay, like, don't tell me I need only this shade of a paint on this wall. Okay, come on. Okay. So one of our clients asked us to paint his entire school wall pink. So we were like, no, the Vastu guy has said. I said, what does this have to do with Vastu? But we have had excellent, people also, Vastu consultants, who made so much sense. Like, for instance, in one house that we were doing in the interiors for, the bathroom door, the bedroom door, and a couple of other doors were in the same line. He said that needs to shift. We asked him why. So he said, this is actually there in the, in the wind direction. So any wind that comes in is going to carry the entire odor and everything into the house, which should not be the case. You have to stagger the walls. That's the reason. I said, makes full sense. So yeah, we've, I think, had, it's a love-hate relationship with Vastu.
I agree with you. See, something as basic, right? Why are we standing? There's gravity. So it's the north or south pole, right? That basic logic. And like you rightly said, Meena, that about the 5 factors, right? The earth, fire, water, those kind of elements which you need to balance. But I think that's what I do. I love to educate my clients. Right. Because a lot of times they come with a mindset because their family has been doing that. Exactly. So it's kind of babysitting them, telling them, hey, listen, I am with you on Vastu, all of that. And you tell them the air flow, water flow, all of that. I believe in balancing that part of it. But then as different topics, as we continuously keep educating them, even on Vastu, one needs to educate, if they're really going overboard, because sometimes it's really a lot. Like, it really doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. One has to draw a line, learn to draw a line.
Because recently I heard a new thing that Vastu is connected with astrology. I said, but if there are 4 people in the house, then whose astrology will you take? So this is just going to another level only. Like, how much can you do? So you have to bring that mindfulness and educate the client where they feel, okay, we are in good hands. It's all going to be good,
Yeah. According to me, Vastu is related to energy.
Yeah.
So, whenever in the ancient time we don't have any type of mechanical instrument like cooling, heating, or lighting. So, based on those requirements, they have created certain type of principles so we can achieve a well-being life.
Yeah.
But nowadays, Vastu consultants are saying your kitchen or a temple or your staircase or living, should be in this place or that place. But they are not considering the context. What is your context? So energy depend on your context. Like the Vastu Shastra says, like your kitchen should be a southeast corner. But why it is in southeast corner? Because you get proper sunlight, wind, and everything. But in case if your context southeast is blocked, so what you can do? There is no energy. So the the Vastu Shastra depend on the what you type of context you have. So according to context, you have to design. Then and thenly you get the positive energy.
By the way, Vastu also has local, say, different versions in different states. So, for instance, in Tamil Nadu, you have something called Manayadi Shastram. So, you use that to find the proportions of spaces. So, that works more on. So, I remember we had given a plan to a client, and when we went to check the first marking, the room sizes had all changed. So, he said, why? How come this is not even going according to our plan? So they said, no, we used Manayadi Shastram and changed the. I was like, excuse me, you're supposed to inform the architect. But there are local scriptures also.
Yes.
So no saying they make sense or not. Most of them were made to make a lot of sense. Just that how far we pull them in what direction, it's up to us.
Yeah, I think moderation is the key. And what I usually use is that you give me a reasoning for this. If there's a reasoning of natural elements, if there's a reasoning
Precisely.
so I think those reasoning makes sense. And as you also said, we have HVAC, we have cooling. So certain reasonings also need to go. But then there are so many Vastu consultants who say things like there should be no levels in the house. So I think that is taking it to an extreme level. So I think balance is the
Yes,
my
balance.
of moderation is
Understand
the
and
key.
I think use that's beautiful.
Yeah.
They are not considering the surrounding energy. They only considering whatever they have. They have like knowledge, like on the book
Yeah.
knowledge, like this should be this facing and all these things. But they are not considering the surrounding energy. So I think we whenever we have to design certain type of space, so we have to consider our context, what type context we have, and how we can achieve a natural light and ventilation.
True. Moving on to the designing for wellness is an investment in health and productivity, achieved by balancing natural elements, light, material, colors, and textures. How do biophilic elements, tailored lighting strategies, and material choices intersect to create interior spaces that enhance both mental and physical well-being and contribute to the user's mood and perception? I'm sure everyone's using biophilia to a certain extent. I mean, it's just a word. Everyone was using it before.
We've always been biophilic, actually.
Yeah,
I mean, we've had courtyard systems since, when God knows when.
exactly. We've always
Right,
been
yeah.
biophic. We've always lived
Yeah.
with the surroundings.
We just got a nice new term
Yeah,
now.
it's a
so-
new term that has been just like sustainability is
Yes.
important. Whereas we always used to have sustainability.
We have always been sustainable. So I think one thing which is a new found thing is lighting design in wellness. For instance, we have always, of course, sunlight has always, it plays one of the key roles in designing a space, which is, it's beautiful and it's mentally, it's just uplifting and charging. But what happens after sundown? Now, most of us come home after sundown. You go to the office in the morning and you come back at night, there is no sunlight. So your artificial lighting has to be designed to uplift you, to kind of create an ambience in the space which allows you to perform different functions very smoothly. For instance, now the kind of lighting that there are lighting designers now who are involved in projects. It's no longer that you take your standard fixtures, put them in the ceiling and finish it off. Now it is designed that this is the activity that is this space has, say for instance, conversation. So when you're talking to each other in the evening, you need some mellow light. Maybe you want to sit with a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or whatever your house has. So then you need something mellow, not stark, and you need a conversation. So your light has to offer you that choice. Okay, if you have an artwork, then just the artwork needs to be lit up. So you have framers now, in lighting. So you have automation which has come in lighting. So it is a very simple process. You don't have to go overboard with automation. But lighting design, if done carefully to highlight what is needed and what are you planning to do in the space, it can also, the same space can transition from being a study to a comfortable TV room in the evening. It's just a pure play of lighting. So that I think it is yet to be, not too many people have delved deep into it, but it holds great potential, and as a home user or
100%.
an office user, definitely we should be looking at it.
True, true. Very true.
Biophilic elements, what are they? It's sunlight, air, ventilation. These are basic elements of nature. A lot of times, for example, again, one of our sites on the 50th floor, right? The client got that apartment for the view that he would get of the sea. And when they start designing, they actually forget what was the reason of being on that 50th floor and paying so much of money for the real estate. So where your house is, where your site is located is superly important. First, just take whatever you can from those elements and then layer on top whatever you need to fulfill their needs is how I look at.
Very true.
Biophilic design is two different type of light quality we have. One is a soft light and another is the harsh light. So depend on context and depend on requirement, we have to allow the soft light and we have to control or maybe filter harsh light. That during ancient time, they have controlled this, the harsh light with the volume, courtyard and jali or maybe vegetation. So there are different way, but nowadays we are working with RCC and glass. We don't have a choice. So, but in this case, we have to, we try to create how can control the harsh light to this type of material. So we have to think about it, and certain type of screening required for this types of context.
I have, sorry.
Sorry. So, the building that we're sitting in right now is made of concrete and glass, and it offers such an amazing shaded space that you don't feel the need to switch on an AC when you're out in the semi-covered areas, and just
100%.
sheer brilliance of aligning your walls right, understanding the site, understanding the elements, and designing accordingly. So I think, this is a prime example of biophilic design.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
of the orientation and volume. Yeah. That's why we achieve this type of
Absolutely.
comfort level.
100%.
Even I think as Indians, there was a phase, I'm sure there's still families, they like their homes like a showroom. All ceiling lights, everything falling on your face down, right? It's all
Yeah.
flat. There is no
Yeah.
gradation. There is no mix of different types of warm light and wall lights and lamps and everything. It's a very Western, it comes from the West, right? But we extensively use that in our projects, and it's a game changer, how the flow of light, because your eyes go where there's light. So whatever you want to accentuate, that's where you put the light. Wherever you want to read is where the light should be. Your entire space need not be lit like one showroom.
True. 100%.
It's actually playing with your senses. That's what as you said. All senses have to be. It is tactile, whether it's whatever senses you're looking at, or you're trying to invigorate it. It has to be done at the right level and the right way. I think that's sound design.
Yeah, bedroom, you want to keep it soft, which sort of puts you to sleep. Study room, you want to have enough light where you can study and do your task lighting. So those things are very important to implement.
Yeah, I think in residential as well as commercial spaces,
absolutely. Yeah.
all of these points are super important, and I think it has always been a part of good design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Schools also, for
Schools
instance,
as well,
schools and
exactly.
biophilia are huge now.
Super important.
Earlier it used to be only like boxes of classrooms
Yeah.
set in a row. Now you have many more engagement spaces, because even the corridors are a learning space. So all the engagement spaces have become semi-covered area where you can interact with the nature, touch the soil, touch the plants, hear the water, droplets.
Yeah.
So that has to be, I think that's
Yeah.
prime
Yeah,
example
and,
of
light actually tells you what to do now. If it's dim light, you're supposed to ease off.
Yeah.
It's bright light, it tells you, come on, let's get in action. So this whole temperature control and everything, like the party light setting or ease off setting, those are fabulous.
Right. It evokes your senses in different ways.
Yeah, it's all the senses, right? What you finally want to feel is what it's all about.
Yeah. That's true. Okay, moving on to the next one. The soul of space often lies in the subtle details like rugs, furniture, textures, colors. that breathe life into a space. These details hold the power to shape emotions, like we talked about senses, comfort, and balance. What principles guide your selection of such elements? What principles guide your selection of these elements? The added elements of rugs,
When we
furniture,
design interior.
yeah, soft textures, textiles. I know it is a very broad topic to kind of cover.
It is a topic which is very close to us.
Yes.
We really expertise in curation. And, there's so much that goes into curating. It really depends what's the end use. Is it a everyday residence or it's a holiday home? Who's going to maintain it? How is it going to be maintained? What is the temperature? If it's hot, you can't use velvets and silks and they have to be cooling materials. Who is the end user? Are there children around or is it for adults? What is the social scene? Is there going to be a lot of traffic? So for example, then if there's a lot of traffic, then you have to use a woolen rug. You can't use a viscose rug because it's too delicate a material to use. So a lot of materials, shapes, forms, like recently we've done a lot of holiday homes in Goa, right? So but when we are doing the curation, we would not do anything that's delicate because it's capable of just breaking. So who is the end user? How is it going to be used? How is it going to be passed on? So a lot of things it's just not about what looks pretty. Because when you go there after a year, those things still got to be there and still it should add value to the space, It's just not for the photo shoot.
I think she's pretty much covered all the points for all of us.
Yeah, she has.
So one thing I would like to kind of such to this, apart from the maintenance and the choice of fabric, is the fact that what kind of prints are you going to be using and what kind of designs are you using. So in our firm, we do a lot of cultural homes. So what we try to do, which is something very interesting, is that whichever part of the country we are doing a home in, we try to source local fabrics, local prints, and use them in our narrative, design narrative. Like for instance, we're doing a house in Mumbai, so we are doing a partition which has Paithani fabric on it. So if we've done chicken drapes in the house that we've done in Lucknow. So we've done chettinad saris as cushion covers and things also, and like not headboard, the top of the headboard where you don't really touch it. So but when you use handloom fabrics, you have to give some extra care to it. Like for instance, the lining would be thicker, or you have like some sprays and stuff, chemicals that you'll have to coat it with. So that's just about it. But I think fabric selection is a beautiful process.
Very beautiful process. Yes.
This point I want to cover in a different way because our studio mainly focus on architecture. So when we talk about rug, furniture and other type of decorative element, so when we design an architecture space, so on those spaces, initially we have considering all this aspect of furniture, like when we talk about rug, so in that case we have considered the flooring as a rug, the furniture we have created niche or maybe a volume. So all this interior element we try to cover in our architecture points.
Yeah.
There's one more thing that I forgot, which is that a lot of projects, there are different kinds of projects, with different budgets. So the higher end budgets, people also like to, customize fabrics. And
was just
that
going to
India
say
is so good
So
at
good
that.
at it.
So,
Yeah.
so good at
So
that.
good at it.
So that customization of maybe it's a rug, maybe it's a bed cover, it's a drape, it could be anything. And the customization is beautiful, it's gorgeous. So
It's amazing.
that is something I would recommend to everyone. You're in India, you have to try out something, at least whatever scale your budget allows you to do experiment with rugs. It could be, you can take a sari, turn it into a wall hanging. So,
100%.
take it out of your grandma's closet, turn it into a wall hanging, do anything with it, go wild. All our fabrics are super cool, super luxurious.
Yeah, and textiles have such a good story to tell. In one of our projects, one of the clients is a fashion designer who works with only Indian weaves and Indian textiles. So we are doing all of the artwork in their house with a mix of Indian textiles and Indian stones. So like you said, customization is the key in Indian market. Plus, as well as they tell such a beautiful story. I think it's a very important part of the spaces. Moving on to the next topic of evolving lifestyles, I think this is a little bit scandalous question. As the world of interior design becomes more increasingly associated with celebrity culture, it often carries an air of exclusivity, making it feel out of reach for many. What do you think has the glamorization of interiors made good design feel, has it made good design feel unattainable for the average person?
You both can give answer because
It's
you're
a
both
little
from
scandalous,
the
yeah.
celebrity culture. That's why.
See, I think the era, the times that we live in, this rules our lives. Okay. So because it rules our lives, what happens is that you are inundated with visual images. And everything that you see on your phone is aspirational. So you have a seriously long list of I want to do this. Okay, so what happens is that all that is stemming from something that you see. And we need to understand that photographs don't tell the whole story.
They don't.
Okay, and so when clients come to us, and it could be anyone, and with lots of money also, if they come up with that, I want what I saw in, that picture, this, that. So we say, listen, whenever you're designing a space, it could be an office, a school, or a home, it's for you to experience, right? So it is not for you to just see, but to experience on a whole. So first close your eyes and see how do you want to feel in that space. Start from there. So literally we have to take them back to square one, ground zero, and tell them, forget all that you've seen. We may come back to it later to understand a language because you all speak a language of visuals. But for now, let's start with how has a space made you feel. Okay, and let's bring those experiences back. And then they start telling us, oh, we went there, that was so beautiful, that we felt so good there. Then you know this is what works with them actually, not what they're showing on the phone.
Right.
So then I think we kind of restart the thing with them. So yes, it's not exactly celebrity culture, it's a wannabe culture. So
Yeah, what is it?
Thanks to Pinterest and Instagram, our lives are hell. But I've started dealing with this a little differently. So in my initial meeting, I tell them, hey, I'm sure you have a lot of references, places, things you love. Why don't you send that to me? So, and I keep telling them, send more, send more. Are you sure there's nothing else? You want to maybe share something else? Okay, maybe, so I keep telling them. So they share everything with me. I sit with it. I make a mood board out of what they have sent me. And I tell them, look, these go together, these don't go together. Do you want me to mix these two? And before that, obviously, they know I'm working on their brief. And they realize themselves that, okay, these things work together, these things don't. So there's clarity that a part of it can be done, a part of it can't be done. You can't do everything.
Yeah.
And then, because, they naturally, I think every person, even though they're not designers, you get attracted to a certain vibe. It's a feeling,
yeah.
right? They are getting attracted to. So I try to find what is that feeling so that the whole process is more wholesome and I'm able to deliver something that really makes them happy. And for some projects where the clients are really ambitious and they come up with too much homework, so to keep that inspiration going, we build on top of that, because they are good ideas. I mean, it's all, and then I ask them, which are your favorite countries you've traveled and which are your favorite restaurants? And they feel so passionate about it because they feel that we're trying to understand who they are, what they like. And they say, I'll tell them, hey, you don't remember you like olives? It has that feel and this picture connects to that. So it's all their matter, served to them from a designer's perspective. So this is for the clients who are really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tumhara khana tum kha lo, hum serve kar
to
rahe hain.
add to that, there are some clients who, when they call you for the first time, will say, I know exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Okay. I said, then you don't need me because I like gray. I like gray areas, lots of them.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
put me in an uncertain space where you say, I think I like this, but I'm not too sure. I'm fine with that. But if you're very sure, you need a contractor and not me.
Yeah.
Okay, so
100%, 100%.
Yeah. So I recently had a client like that. So I said, why don't you send me what you like? And then I see if what she likes, is it something I can like?
Yeah.
Because I have to do justice to it.
True.
And then if I say, oh, if I like your taste, it's only then when we onboard them.
Yeah, the vibe has to match.
Because I have to be able to value add to what they already
Yeah.
like, right? It's very important. Yeah.
They just like what they like.
Yeah.
But mostly people are like,
They're open. Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Till they start finding value in what you're saying, it's a whole building trust thing, right? You have to build trust.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Yeah.
also like I think now in hospitality, a lot of clients come up with this idea that they want something that looks good on Instagram, which I get from a business perspective that they need to showcase these spaces on Instagram. The major platform for marketing is
No to those
Instagram.
projects.
But it definitely is how like our how technology is becoming the main governing element of how we design, and it has evolved into that. Yes, Manoj.
Almost cover all these things.
I think now you should take the first question. Even I'm shutting off.
Talking about the pandemic forced us to reimagine our houses, which we talked about earlier, turning them into hubs for not just houses but also work, wellness, relaxation. As remote work sort of continues in hybrid mode, a lot of people want these home offices. How has the design changed of residences, especially, and how do we blur the line between personal? As designers, how do we help them blur the line between personal and professional? Sorry? Yeah, so during the pandemic, we started working from our homes, and now we are designing spaces which have workspaces in our homes as well. So how do as designers we balance both of these things, and how has the designing changed, and how do we help the client not blur the lines between personal and professional?
You're the boss.
So I think technology plays a huge role here. Because what happens is that when you have a certain amount of space in your home, and you can't keep one room permanently as an office space,
Right.
or you can't even keep some space as a permanent guest space.
Yeah.
Now what happened in COVID? You had no guests and you had an office, or probably two offices and a school or two schools running from home.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So now somewhere people have kind of gotten used to it. Now schools will give you an off for every reason. Okay, you have so many offs.
So
I
true.
wonder, why am I paying the fee? He's sitting at home more than he's in the school. Okay, but so you have hybrid methodology coming in schools, hybrid work cultures coming in. So that means you need spaces that can evolve from being in one, say, zone to another. So for instance, a room could function as an office during the daytime. It could turn into an entertainment hub in the evening. In the morning, it could be your yoga room. So or when the guests come over, which I strongly always recommend that if you have guests only 10 to 20 days in a year, please don't waste an entire room putting a double bed there. Okay, you have so many things to do in a house, right?
Yeah.
And use it. So then a convertible room, maybe a pull-out partition, maybe a Murphy bed, maybe lights which kind of change the entire ambience, screens that come, screens that go, disappearing walls. These are the things that help us literally regenerate, revive a room, and being from one, doing it, it has one, say, role to play, and suddenly it goes into another role. So I think technology plays a huge role in converting one space into another, and that flexibility is needed in all kinds of homes now.
True. Very true.
There's every time there's a home project, every extra room, it's said, usko guest room, obviously guest room, right? But I think what's important to bring out to the client is that earlier days you needed a guest room because there were a lot of guests coming to your house. Today, if you see over the whole year, they would also say maybe 10, 12 days, maximum 15 days, somebody would occupy that room. Another thing, earlier, a lot of women didn't work. Today, mom, dad both go to work, and they are equally helping out in looking after the children or whatever. Like mom, or if moms are working from home, they need a dedicated space, which is just not a makeshift on a dining table or one little table tucked in their bedroom where they can open their laptops and work, right?
Exactly.
They have to feel inspired. They have to enjoy what they do. So I highly recommend to convert room as a proper study. and have a provision of a bed, Murphy bed or whatever, which can be opened up. But it got to be study where it's your zone where you can do yoga, you can do meditation, it can be a kid-free zone. You could really feel inspired. Just not get like a ergonomically table and chair makeshift arrangement. Like convert that room into a proper study, because it's really important, because all the grown-ups of the house are working and you need space, and there's always one guy working from home looking after the children if it's a young family. So that's how we
Also, when you're designing home offices, one has to be very careful of sound, because you can't put a home office right next to a kitchen. You'll have cooker whistles
True.
blowing through your Zoom call.
Continuously, yeah.
Okay, you need a good background where you're sitting, and we need to design those backgrounds. We also cannot have a door right behind where the desk is. The light has to fall on the face. So we design a study room keeping all these things in mind, because you've seen so many bloopers in COVID time, people walking in, kids walking in.
Kids walking in the room.
Right? Yeah. So you don't want any of those. So you have to design keeping all these things in mind while you're doing the design.
And even one more thing we've consciously, now I think of it, I realize post-COVID, our dining tables have become much larger. They have become like tables where you can have meetings, you can eat, obviously, children can do activities. It's no more like if there are only 4 people in the house, we would try our best to give probably an 8-seater, because that platform is amazing where 2 children and a parent can work together. They co-work so much, so the dining table definitely has more use to it now. It's just not an eating space.
It's evolved into a community area.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. That's very true.
Yeah.
That's such a good observation, yeah.
So after pandemic, I have designed our own studio. So depend on how work culture with the household. Like in our studio, we have created 6th floor. So on ground +3, we have proposed the commercial office like our studio. And last 2 floor we have created one penthouse. Maybe it's a relaxation area, or maybe it's my own house. So in this case, we have exploring how we can connect the work culture with the office. Yeah.
Traditionally in India, we've always had work from home. If you look at all our craftsmen, all the people, the front of the house would be where they work, and the back of the house is where they would relax.
Yeah.
Right? So work from home is nothing new for Indians actually.
Yeah.
So traditionally we've had this for a very, very long time.
True, very true, yeah.
But,
Yes, please. No, go ahead.
So we have to create such kind of environment. Then and then only you can create. You can maybe emphasize the work culture.
Absolutely. See, the child grows up seeing the parents work, and there is more respect to seeing how much hard work they are putting in, okay, during the day at work, how much, what they are going through. So I think it's a bonus, it's a very beautiful environment that the house has, where everybody understands the pressures on each other, and they, end of the day, you kind of step up to support and give them a helping hand.
Yeah. So moving ahead to the next segment, which is adaptability. Every region has its own distinct design sensibilities and operational challenges. How do you manage the complexities of designing a new region, from understanding culture and nuances, handling clients, and execution?
Okay, that's something that we do all the time because we do cultural homes. And the idea is to know the backstory of a client.
Yeah.
See, every client has a journey, okay, as to how they've reached where they are. And it's very, very interesting to know that journey. And that journey has so many insights on, it tells you why they are like what they are right now, and what is it that will appeal to the inner core of, them. So a house also has to bring back memories of this journey, the good points and the memorable points. And somewhere we take those elements and we turn them either into artworks or, do something so that it's, for instance, there's a house that we're doing in Mumbai where the clients are Tamilians, okay, but they have a deep-rooted connection to Mumbai. And so the entire house is being done in a Vada style. So, so we you have to talk to the clients, understand them, and not design things on the, surface of it, not superficially. So cultural links are something that we have grown up with, and it hits a deeper note in you. And it is very necessary for us to delve into that, find that, and then use it in a very contemporary context, make it relevant in today's times, and not just blatantly copy, but use it so that it brings back memories. Yes, it's a comfortable convenience for them.
Yeah. Okay. No, I was just moving on to the execution portion of it, because execution is very city specific. You have different agencies who work in very different ways depending on each city, as we've observed. How do you kind of balance that? Do you have site supervisors where you guys work in different cities? Do you constantly go to those cities to manage the sites? How does the balance come through?
Technology is a huge helper here.
Yes.
So
yeah, true.
now in our country, there is nobody without a WhatsApp. Okay, so everyone knows at least how to use a WhatsApp.
Yeah.
So the workers who are the main, we do a lot of turnkey projects also. So when we are doing work in, say, different cities across India, one of the key, challenges is to manage the labor, and what kind of finishes are they giving? Are they sticking to the deadline? Are they doing the work as needed? Consultation work is easier across cities because everybody talks drawings. You're talking to a contractor, they will understand what drawings are you talking about. The client will understand a drawing through Zoom calls. Everything is easy. It is when you have to manage on-site labor, that becomes quite a big challenge. But thanks to technology, this is also kind of something that we are managing to do with ease. But there are, of course, challenges to every, like for instance, if it is a large scale project, if you're doing, say, design and build for a hotel, now you will have to mobilize labor from where you can control them better. So for instance, we've done hotels in Chennai. We have mobilized the entire labor team from Delhi, because they're going to come back here for the money, so they will know, and plus they are there with the sole intent of completing that work in record time so that they can get their money and earn a better remuneration.
Yeah.
So they are very happy to go there, finish their work, and come back.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one thing. And of course, rules and regulations one has to be very careful of when you're working in other cities. All the transportation, say GST, this, that, everything has to be, the paperwork has to be impeccable when you're working across cities.
Very true.
When we talk about a new region, so there are different type of challenges and different type of opportunity also. So when we designer approach to the new region, so there is a possibility of exploring material, climate, and client culture. So we have 3 years back we have done one project in Kishangarh, Rajasthan. So in that case, we have explored many more possibility of cultural exploration, material, as well as the climate. So I love to explore the new region and new technology.
That's true. That's such a great answer. Okay, moving on. Brands like IKEA, Pepperfry, and Livspace have made design more accessible. What do you think? Do they limit creativity by offering predefined choices that may not inspire deeper exploration?
See, I think the market has a lot of people who want different kinds of things. Now, a person who wants IKEA will go to IKEA.
Yeah.
A person who wants more than IKEA, which is a customized solution, not a generic one, will come to us.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't have any problems with IKEA. There are people who will want IKEA. There are people who will want us also. So I don't think there is any, but people like Livspace, they have started collaborating with architects to execute projects as well.
Yeah, they do that.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're not just doing their own thing, they are also acting as a support system for architects. For instance, if me being in Gurgaon, I have to work in, say, UP or Mumbai or someplace, I can hire a Livspace team to work for me.
True.
So I don't think, this market is so huge, we don't have to view anyone as a competition.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of space for everyone to thrive in here individually and happily.
Yeah, and I think there's also a balance of things where in the house, not everything needs to be customized, or in a commercial space, not
Yes,
everything
we also
needs.
use IKEA products.
Yeah,
I mean, I love
exactly.
their organizers. So once we are done with it, it's like a
Organizers
truckload
is
of organizers
fantastic,
that
yeah.
come in and go
Yeah.
into the spaces. So,
Yeah, so there's a space for everyone
Yes,
in the-
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, Manoj?
Due to rapid urbanization, these types of brand very needed for the balance of demand and supply. Because when talk about the India, we have a rich tradition and craft, and we have a skilled labor also. So in this case, we only depend on those. So we cannot fulfill the requirement of urbanization. So being architect, we have to create a such type of background, and those company will help us doing the furniture and other type of whatever we need, and we tie up with them and we create the wonderful space.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
IKEA has a life. The product has a certain life to it, right?
Yeah.
And in India, still, I mean, till now, we've not broken out of the mold of having a solid piece of furniture. Okay, so IKEA doesn't say it's like a forever piece of furniture. It's
True.
meant for people who move in, stay there for a few
Temporary.
years, and then move on. So people understand that difference, and they also choose wisely according to that.
True. That's true. So now we're moving on to the next topic, which is technology, AI. What is the current buzzword? As smart homes become the norm, the challenge lies in not in just adopting technology, but in integrating it harmoniously. How do you strike the balance between innovation, warmth, creativity, and technology?
See, automation is actually making huge strides by the day. Okay, lots of things are happening. But in a home, we have all kinds of age groups, right? You have a senior citizen, you have a young kid. Children take to technology like, to fish to water kind of a thing. But with elders, it's a little problematic. So what you need to do is the most important thing in the success of automation is the interface, is the user interface. So if you, it's fine.
User friendly.
Yeah, user interface. So if you have a very easy user interface, then technology is easy. If it is complex, you are just going to reject it after a day or two, and you will not take it. So if it should be so easy that you start doing it without putting an extra effort onto it. Like for instance, automated curtains. You get up in the morning, you go, and then the curtains are open, and it's actually good because minute you start automating your curtains, we've realized that the dependency on artificial light goes really down. The entire day your curtains are open. Okay, you don't physically go and do anything. One click of a button and it's done. So it is good, but sometimes people may not want like automated geysers and stuff. Not everybody wants hot water baths when they enter the house. So people will say, I don't want that. So I think it's a choice that we have to make, and yes, the interface is the most important thing. So
What do you think, Manoj?
Yeah, when we talk about automation nowadays, according to me, it is needed because automation have a certain type of schedule. So during we have done this type of schedule in our office. So we have a south-facing facade, and it's covered with large glass. So in this case, we know about the sun movement. So sun around around 10, it's come to that facade, and the sunset around the 4 to 5 o'clock. So according to that, we have scheduled our the curtains. So that is very helpful for us. And nowadays we are scheduling all type of like what we want, like what type of lighting we want, and what type of music, what time we want to listen to this music. So this is very helpful for us. And second thing is the energy saving mode. So automation have an energy saving mode, like your light turn off at around evening 6 o'clock, and it's down at the evening 8 o'clock. So this types of command very helpful for nowadays when we talk about energy saving.
Right, yeah, exactly. And I think automation is helping to eradicate the non-essential chores of your life. as is AI. I think it is, if we use it correctly, it's helping us eliminate the non-essential
As
parts
we
of
say,
it.
no, the knife is just a tool. It's how you use it that
Yeah.
makes it helpful or dangerous.
That's such a good saying. So
Yeah,
talk,
but smart way you can use it.
That's
So
exactly,
it's
that's
definitely, it
precisely.
is helpful for
A
us.
sculptor also
Yeah,
uses
yeah.
the same tools.
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's
what you
true.
create is up to you.
Is
with the
it's up
tool.
to you
Yeah.
and how you use it. So while AI is often seen as a tool for efficiency, some designers are beginning to see it as a creative partner. How do you feel AI's role in the future of interior design, and do you think it can enhance the creativity of designers or automate the tasks we traditionally handle?
See, there's something that I strongly believe in, that AI or artificial intelligence needs an NI or a natural intelligence behind it.
200%.
Yeah, by itself, it can't do anything. Okay. Now, if you give, say, a prompt. Now, AI works on prompt. Okay. The prompt has to be so clear and specific that you need to know your work. You need to know exactly what you want. Then only that prompt will give you or yield the right result. If you don't, अब मेरे को पता ही नहीं मेरे को क्या चाहिए, and I give it a prompt, it's not magic. It's not going to come up with, oh, it's not your mother, na, to कि आज इसके ये खाने का mood है. It doesn't work like that. So AI is a tool. It's a smarter tool. That's just about it. You can train it, and you can kind of create it to suit your convenience. So there's no need to run away from it, no need to unnecessarily put it in spaces where you don't need it. So as I said, it's a smart tool, be smart with it. You need a smart person behind that smart tool. That's it.
And I think this idea of it being a creative partner, I think that is not ever going to be possible, because AI is also fed certain things, and it's whatever input it's giving is kind of what is already existing and a merging of what is already existing. So I think this scare of AI is completely
No, I'm not scared of AI. Most
Yeah.
people who come to me don't know what they want. See, there is something called latent needs. Okay.
Yeah.
As architects, our biggest job is to find out what the client wants. Many a times they don't know what they are exactly wanting.
exactly.
So that gray area is what we specialize in, kind of reading, understanding, and giving them a solution. Now, people who don't know what they want cannot demand what they want through AI. So AI needs specific input,
exactly
right? So it is not functioning in the same zone as us designers.
Yeah.
So no
and
thanks.
it does help mediate the very basic tasks of visualization.
Absolutely.
It's a great visualization
Anything
tool.
that's mundane can be replaced,
Yeah.
which I think it should be also.
It should be.
So-
It's like any technology,
Absolutely.
which enhances our productivity.
Yes.
And it sort of, even the visualization aspect of it, certain visuals, let's say making renders, is such a long drawn process.
Exactly. I love it. I love
Instead
it.
of that, it's
yeah.
just
Absolutely.
few minutes.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Manoj, what do you think? Same. I think he's done. So, okay, in what ways do you see interior design moving forward, playing a role in shaping mindsets, habits, and choices of people who inhabit these spaces and elevate modern lifestyles?
I think we are spending more time in our homes now, and I'll talk about homes right now because I think this, of course, it impacts all the other typologies as well. But homes, we are spending more time in our home because our work is also kind of being centered around our home, also the education. So we are more sensitive towards how the space affects us. Okay, so I think that sensitivity will bring forth, I'm quite hopeful that it is going to bring forth some very good changes in the future. And yeah, I think we need to look more inward than outward. And that is something that,
True.
I would look at as a future trend in interior design that we need to
Yeah.
await.
Yeah.
So according to me, designer have a king of the designer. So client have a different type of mindset, and if we design with the client mindset, so it will not create what we want. So in our studio, we try to educate them, and we create a number of reference, and we try to develop their minds and all these things, and according to we will create all type of spaces.
True.
So first we have to educate them like what the architecture should be, or what type of material selections.
We had
colours
some
and-
clients who were super brilliant also. So it's
Yeah, yeah.
not a-
Visionaries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Some case we might
There's always
follow
some
them.
visionaries
yeah,
who
yeah.
are so good that they elevate your project to even better heights than what you could have taken them to.
Absolutely.
I think we've had a lot of
I told
clients like
couple of
that.
my clients, I said, Do you mind being a partner in my firm?" Fabulous minds.
Fabulous, yeah, 100%. So I think we've reached to the end of it. There's just one last question. When it comes to sourcing furniture, there's a tendency to look abroad, to China, to Italy. The Indian furniture market has a lot to give. Given the rise of Indian furniture brands, how much is the balance of ordering from India and how much is the balance? And also, what are the advantages and disadvantages of Indian furniture?
See, the furniture that we are currently making in India, especially we are sitting in Ahmedabad, absolute pioneering in terms of design and furniture. It's phenomenal what some people are doing here. The problem that we have in India, over if you compare it to say Foshan, when you go to China, you have all the choices in that 20, 50, whatever kilometer, say, diameter, right? And within that one city, you just keep walking here, there, everywhere. You find everything under one roof. So in India, you have to go to Bangalore, you have to go to Mumbai, you have to go to Ahmedabad, Delhi, Kolkata. You will have to travel. All the good brands are spread out, okay? Though they are all available online and you can talk to them, but we still in India want to touch and feel the things that we, are going to buy. So people go to China, sit on the products and see and check the quality, and then they buy. In India, just because they are spread out, it becomes a tad tedious to buy all the furniture together. And that is the only reason people go to China. Otherwise, quality-wise, trust me, we are second to no one. I mean, we have phenomenal, the kind of designs that I'm seeing in furniture now, the kind of innovation that people are putting in with materials and traditional knowledge coming into modern furniture. You have inlay work, you have brass work, and what not happening, and the kinds of wood we have. It is fantastic, but the problem is not too many people are aware of it.
Yeah.
So we need to ensure that they all kind of come under one roof so that it's easy for a client to go and see all of them together and say, yes, I can buy 10 pieces from here, 10 pieces from there, do this, do that, and come back. Makes life easier for them. So
the
we just need
convenience
that
is a-
one umbrella
Yeah.
to hold all of them
Yeah.
together. That's the only advantage China has over India, nothing else.
True.
Yeah, because of our culture, we are not finding that type of modular furniture. So now India is also growing in that manner, like how we can the balance the demand and supply chain. Yeah.
I think design shows are trying to get people together to kind of do that, but I think there is still a little bit of way to go with that.
Designers are aware of the design shows,
Yeah,
not
the clients.
clients.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, so I think we can conclude the session on this. Thank you so much for your lovely inputs. It was a great conversation.
Thank you. A great conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to our esteemed panelists for sharing their valuable insights and perspectives throughout the session. I strongly believe that one takeaway personally for me was the idea that we need to cater to all five senses to be able to create an experience and to create the feeling of happiness in a home or in any interior space where we spend most of our time. And apart from that, I think this session was truly a very fresh masterclass into design, where ranging from tips and tricks to industry secrets, we sort of got it all from you. So thank you so much for sharing what you know with us. It was a great session, but we will not let you go so soon. We have individual questions for you, followed by an engaging rapid fire session to sort of pick up on missed pieces. My first question is to Ms. Meena. Reflecting on your 19 years of design experience, how has your approach to integrating well-being into interiors evolved, and what key lessons have you learned?
One thing that I have learned is to stop blindly following trends. Well-being is what works for one may not work for the other, right? So well-being, it's like going to a doctor. You can't give a prescription for the whole family together, right? So you need to understand people. You need to understand families, how they work together, and your solution has to be catered to them. So one thing that I tell all my clients now is to stop looking outwards and start looking inwards to know what you really want from a space, and that is what then we proceed to give them, and that is the core of having a space that is designed for well-being.
Absolutely, thank you so much. My next question is to Mr. Manoj. Your work often incorporates reclaimed materials in unconventional ways. How do you think material storytelling contributes to emotional well-being in interior spaces?
Yeah, I come from the town of Vadodara, and in my childhood, I have seen whenever type of things needed to people, they try to create from the reclaimed materials. So that inspired me to go for sustainable architecture, and I pursue my sustainable architecture. And after the PG, I started practice it. And every time we try to create the space out of the reclaimed materials. So recently, 6 months back, I have got project in Ahmedabad, and we are doing a renovation project. So that project the constructed by one of the builder, but before 20 to 25 years ago, the owner designer in that way, like they use much wood, stone and other type of material. So when we visited the site and I talked to the client, like these are the very good material, we are try to incorporate in our interior space. So initially client are not were not agree to use these types of material, but we convinced them, and we said that like we have a nice proposal, and my team work on the proposal. And after the few days, I proposed to the client, and they very much happy about it. And now we are going that project. So we try to reclaim material with in a contemporary way. We are not maintaining their own character.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience, sir. My final question is to our moderator, the one asking the questions. How do you ensure that the dynamic interaction between the user and their environment is captured in your designs, especially when considering well-being as the central theme?
So I think this whole discussion, I think we have centered across this topic. The interaction of user and environment, I think that's there in every sort of smallest aspect of design, especially architecture. Architecture is truly designed according to the context, the functions, the client's lifestyle, and I think that's what defines the spaces that are part of it as well. So if we are talking about residences, we recently designed a residence where we've given this massive, large facade space, but a tactile, like a facade space which is sort of faceted on the side where the sun rises. So the whole facade is designed parametrically in a way where in their dining space, because it's a multi-generational house, everyone comes together in the dining space. That's their whole, that's their hub, and also that opens up to a double height space where everyone comes together to interact, which becomes, so this is one example of it, but this is how spaces, whether it's any sort of work that anybody is doing, whether it integrates technology, parametrics, whatever sort of work everyone's doing, the end idea is still the user, the functionality, and how do we enhance, how do we give them what is needed, how do we give them what they haven't been able to say, that as a betterment to their lifestyle. We often say this, like a better lifestyle without increasing the budget too much. So that's sort of, yeah, the gist of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. One final round of rapid fire questions. You can all answer together. One of you can go. It's completely up to you. So, an element of interior styling you believe is underrated. An element of interior styling you
Yeah,
believe is underrated.
According to me, lighting.
Lighting and rugs.
Curtains, I think, yeah.
All right. Which design style do you prefer to adapt? Raw and casual or refined and conventional?
Raw.
Raw and unconventional.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I'll copy that.
Perfect. If you could choose one emotion to evoke through your designs, what would it be?
Joy.
Peace.
Peace.
What is your go-to material that you find versatile enough to use in any of your designs?
Wood.
Clay tile.
All Indian materials. I love the stones, kadampa, kota stone, everything, all Indian materials.
If you could sum up your design style in 2 words, what would they be?
Indie genius.
Exploring joinery.
I think 2 words are too less. I'm not really, I can't think of any. Maybe unconventional, I don't know. I think.
Perfect. What is your favorite part of the design process from concept to completion?
The day I have the shoot. It's just so beautiful to see whatever you visualized come together so beautifully. So I think my entire team is like having a party on the day of the shoot.
Yeah.
I prefer detailing.
When the clients send me pictures of them using, pictures and videos of them using the space, that's, I think, that's the fun part of it.
The most exciting innovation in interiors today?
Automation, I think.
Automation, absolutely, yes.
Minimalism or maximalism?
In between. Because, see, there has to be a pattern to maximalism. I like maximalism, but with a pattern, not mad maximalism.
Yeah.
I can't handle that.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah, I think somewhere in between, contemporary maximalism,
What's your top online destination for furniture design ideas?
Top online destination.
Furniture design.
Ideas.
Probably has to be Pinterest, I think, because of the images it gives out. But if I had to talk about reading articles and stuff, then Architect's Diary.
That's lovely.
Yes,
Architect's Diary.
Architect's Diary and Midjourney.
One last question to sum up the session. One word to describe your approach to well-being in design.
Keep at it.
Courtyard.
Stay in touch with yourself.
Thank you so much for being here and taking out time from your schedules
Thank
to
you,
give us this
pleasure.
amazing session.
Thank you so
so
much.
much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you for having us here. Thank you.